Welcome back. I'm going to do a top 5 things for the bike today. The top 5 things to love, top 5 things to hate. Let's get into it. Guys, we're back for another rocket review where I talk about the 5 things that you just gotta love about this bike and 5 things you hate. Okay, hate's a strong word. 5 things to dislike, 5 things that could be improved. Okay, anyway. Let's talk some more about that. So, number one's important because this bike, when you crank that right grip, oh, it's a bit rough here, but it does not care, it just goes. So that's number one. The performance of this thing is just astonishing if you're coming from any bike really, even if you're a sport bike rider and you're used to that effortless speed. The way this just goes like a turbine, like just a really fast train, is pretty it's pretty amazing. Yeah, so number one thing to love about this bike: performance, the acceleration, the pace, the effortlessness. They're just they're next level. And you know, I don't come from smaller bikes, I come from larger bikes with plenty of power and pace, and yeah, this is a whole other level of just effortless acceleration, torque, pace. Now sure, the roadster styling means that you number 2, the handling. Woo. Yeah, the roadster styling means you can't do hundreds of kilometers an hour without blowing off the back, but yeah, over we lean. Number 2, like I said, the handling for something this big is really good. So yeah, 2, handling. Oh, have to be careful around here. It's technically not a boy racer zone. No. But that's just accelerating to the speed limit, I promise. Scouts, aren't I? Oops, speed bump. Now we're going to take a little detour to talk about number 3. Okay, number 3. Look at the thing. Its looks are phenomenal. I think if they're giving away awards for industrial design to motorcycle designers, this one's got to be right up there. Like this centerpiece of an engine that is just massive. Just look at it. It's so big, and the hydroform pipes and how the pipes are all integrated and look the same on both sides, and it's just, you can't not think that they've done a good job. I don't care what sort of bike you've come from, whether it's a cruiser, whether it's a sport bike, whether it's a naked, this kind of bugs, sorry, this is just a good looking thing. Yep, it is really, really big and imposing, but it's just got everything going for it from that perspective in terms of its looks. Okay, number four is the quality. So we look at how they've done things, and I will probably switch cameras for this. We look at what they've done, you know, knurling and the brushed alloy with the little accents and features, and how they've, you know, you've seen this before, everyone raves about it, as, you know, this really cool fold out pillion peg. They're all quality touches. Okay, number five. The number 5 thing to love about this bike is the amount of tech they've packed in. So you saw earlier, one of my earlier videos did the ride tech overview. That was purely just talking about the instruments, the instrumentation, but I was going to slowly but surely run through all the things this bike has that make it absolutely modern. So you saw it's got an LCD display. I will try and link up here to that old video if I'm good enough on YouTube working that out. We'll see how we go. So it does have that LCD display. This one I've added the Bluetooth integration module that lets me control that GoPro, which you saw in the ride tech video. It lets me connect to the Senna Bluetooth. It lets you check all of your meaningfuls. So whether you're, you know, your fuel range, your fuel consumption, your coolant levels. When you're connected to your phone, it lets you see your SMSs, check your missed calls, let you answer and hang up calls, let you have conversations. There's quite a lot of things that it can do. There's also some caveats with that tech, which I'll talk about as one of the 5 things I'm not such a fan of. Okay. Other tech that this bike has, it does have a 3-axis inertial measurement unit, so it has alongside ABS and traction control, it has cornering ABS and traction control, which means that it knows when the bike's leaned over and will engage both of those systems differently depending on the attitude of the bike. So it's less aggressive when you're leaned over, because that's not a good thing to do. You don't want aggressive braking or aggressive changes to your fueling while you're mid-corner. So yeah, it just modulates those systems in such a way that you're safer more often. So that's all fairly modern tech. That's superbike tech that you see. In terms of other tech for a bike this size, seeing some of the largest brakes on a bike on this, you know, that rear Brembo is as big as most front Brembos on other bikes. The other thing that it has is the ABS module that connects to the front and the back brakes. Also lets both lever and pedal apply both front and back. So even if you're suffering from the squishy rear pedal problem, pulling the front does still give you some back brake because it goes through the ABS. It turns out the ABS module might be the cause of some of those spongy rear brake issues. I have only had mine bled once. It's got a very specific procedure where you have to plug in the dealer tool. You can do it yourself with Tune ECU. It basically talks to the ABS module and starts the process of bleeding using the ABS assistance, because if you just bleed it the typical way with the nipples, you're not clearing any of the air out of the ABS part of the lines. So yeah, it's a more complicated system, but because it's electronic, it's probably not as mechanically complicated as Honda's old DCBS, which relied on leverage from the front caliper to push a piston to push the rear caliper, and they were, you know, quite tricky to bleed as well. But once you knew how, it was just one or two extra steps compared to a normal brakes. But yeah, there's a lot of tech on this bike that's pretty awesome. It would be better, I think, if the front forks had some preload adjustment rather than just rebound and compression damping adjustment. The rear is fully adjustable, so it has preload as well. But depending on your size and weight, you know, it may not, you may never get it right. Nitron in the UK are doing a replacement set of a replacement rear shock, and I understand they're testing at the moment front cartridge replacement. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that goes. The guys who have done it say it's pretty good. You know, you'll notice that because we're just having a conversation about things to love and things to not love about this bike, I'm not really rushing to overtake people. So yeah, we're just having a cruise. It's a nice day. Anyway, let's get to things I'm not a fan of with this bike, and I'm gonna start at number one. The number one thing about this bike that you need to be wary of is it's big. And I did say in the very first owner's video it disguised itself well, and it does to a point. So I'm going to show up a picture now of what can happen if you take it for granted how big it is. Ready? There it is. Yep, that happened in my driveway. Now, the reason I didn't stop it is because once it had gotten past a point where I realized it had somehow the stand wasn't in the right place, it started going, and when I pushed with my left leg, not many people can hold 300 odd kilos once it's getting away from you on one leg. So as I felt my hamstring tear, I cried out in pain and just gently put the bike down. Now, on the plus side, let's get back to quality and design. Here's a picture of how it rested on the ground. Put it up now. If you can see that, you'll see it's resting on the foot peg and the front guard where the forward mount pegs would go, and the side stand. Now, it also pushed the gear lever up a bit and flexed it towards the block, which means it did actually make a mark on the block. But this is the total, I'm going to put the picture up now, the total damage from a stationary drop. Check it out. Hardly anything. That forward guard is probably $100 part. I had a stationary drop on the Blackbird, it cracked the fairing. That's thousands of dollars to get an original fairing when they were available. You stopped being able to get that stuff a decade ago, which means you're always, you know, trying to come up with a way of repairing it and doing paint blending, etc, etc. But this, on its side, the end of the handlebars here, nothing. Mirror, nothing. If you can see that first picture, the screen touched against the wheel of the Audi, the SQ5, coming up in another video. Like, comment, subscribe. And it's got a little scuff on it that with one rub of the finger, 3/4 the scuff was gone, and the other one will polish out. So the $320 screen, all good. No problems at all. So yeah, although I felt like a right tool, not so much a tool, just a goose. Tool's an extra special kind of idiot. I don't think I'm one of those. Yeah, look, I was like, but it is what it is. So that's number one. It is big, don't get me wrong. Number two. So the second thing that I'm not a fan of, and I just talked about it before, was some of those niggling quality issues. Let's go look at that footage. So some of the fittings, like you have a look at these fittings here, some others, the anodizing is not great, and some people find them corroding too early in climates that are not ideal. I think you should have a listen to the bike. But yeah, so that is one of the quality things. I have had a couple of times now where I've ended up with residue. I've ended up with residue on the forks, and that was from new. This thing's only got 2,200 Ks on it, and they've run, you know, seal savers and everything, and it's still doing it. So I'll have to get to the bottom of that. Okay, number three. The third thing I dislike about it is, after, it's got to be 2.5 years now, because the TFC came out in 2019, there is still next to nothing in the way of aftermarket improvements you can do on these bikes. Now, the counter to that argument is Triumph did such a great job right off the bat. There's, to be fair, most of the improvements I've seen, and I'm looking at you people who buy Corbin stuff, are just well, you go and have a look for yourself. I'm not going to slag off anyone's taste, but my word, look, the custom colouring and blacking out parts of the bike, and custom tank paint and all that kind of stuff. Fill your boots, go your hardest, love that stuff. Everyone has their taste there, but when it looks like you've turned it into some kind of hearse so you can carry bodies on the back of it, and you've got saddlebags you can carry bales of hay in, you just should have just gone and bought a bagger, just saying. But yeah, things like you know, there's only a handful of exhausts available for it. There's you know, there's not a lot of made for it, you know, bar end indicators and mirrors and stuff like that, that sort of sit low but don't add a lot to the width of the bike. You can get generic parts and make them fit, but yeah, come on, it's not really the same as when it's made for it, when it's designed. So an example of that, Triumph's pannier racks just look brilliant on the bike in terms of they fold up out of the way and take the bags off. The bags themselves suit the look, GT look, mind you. I wouldn't put them on an R, but they suit the look of the bike. But then there's these Becker bags and these aftermarket rails where you have to hack up the bike to get them to fit, and because you can carry a bit more weight and stuff on a subframe that's, you know, Triumph puts weight limits on for very specific reasons, because they've done a bunch of testing and said if you overload it, it's not going to be good. But, you know, some people are going to want to do it. So yeah, number three, not a lot of aftermarket. Salute. Okay, number four. This is the fourth worst thing about this bike, and I'm sitting with it between my legs. That fuel tank looks massive. It's not. There is so much tech under that tank in terms of sensors and ignition coils that the actual tank part is just up at the top, and it only holds 17 or 18 litres, which, if you're out on the open road that's okay, right? You're going to get maybe, you know, 260, 270 k's before your light comes on if you're out on the open road. But you're not going to get, you know, a 400 range, you know, 500 range like you would on a touring bike. So even if you did buy the GT because you wanted to go and have a bit of a tour around, you're going to put on your panniers, which are about 25 litres each, which means you can fit your helmet in if you don't have an extra large. Again, you can fit a weekend's worth of clothes in it probably. You're still going to, you know, stop and fill up as often as the sport bikes are, mainly because when you're really wringing this thing's neck, it is 2.5 litres, and you know, you're not talking about getting 5 and 6 litres per 100 kilometres. You're talking about getting 10 when you're sort of giving it a bit of stick. Look, that's the price you pay. I'm not too concerned that I'm not able to, you know, ride to Sydney without a stop, because I have done some longish rides, and honestly the seat's probably not comfortable enough to sit in it for hours at a time. Even though it is a comfortable seat compared to sport bikes, it's just not comfortable enough. So I guess you'd like to hear about number 5. So the 5th thing that I really dislike about this bike is really not this bike's fault, but it's the fact that I have not had time to ride this bike as much as I want. Mainly because the Australian summer has been the wettest we've had in a long time. La Nina has been quite the cow to us. You might have seen on the news, if you're overseas, you know, flooding in New South Wales and Queensland, and it's been pretty bad, you know, like towns cut off for weeks at a time just because there's the roads are all still underwater, because when it continues to rain, the water just doesn't subside enough. And Australia, being as big as it is, means that we don't really spend enough on infrastructure for, you know, dams and creeks and canals and stuff. So anyway, but that's my top 5 things to love about this bike: performance and handling, quality, tech, and how this thing looks. Yeah, it's pretty magic in terms of, I've had a few bikes over the years and this one's been the best of all of them.